Yeah.
You're live.
Good evening and welcome to the May 9th, 2024 meeting of the Town of Lake Luzerne Zoning Board of Appeals. Would you all please rise and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Chris, would you call the roll?
Matt Palich,
Present.
Ralph Zubel,
Yes.
Michael Bordeaux,
Here.
Kayla Jarrell,
Here.
Sonia Harris.
Here.
Thank you.
Welcome.
On this evening's agenda, we have a new application, variance 2024 AV-1, John Terlaga, Harris, 83.
Sorry, I left. Harris is a mistake, should be crossed off.
I kind of figured that. John Terlaga, 83 Fenway Drive, distance between structures variance. New application variance 2024 AV-2, Robert Mazlanka, 238 East River Drive, 1 acre required for chickens, parcel is 0.69 acres. And enclosure is required to be inside the rear yard, proposals in the front yard. We have accepted the minutes from previous ZBA meetings and new and old business. And before we get into that, we have a new alternate member of the Zoning Board of Appeals, Sonia Harris, who was appointed by the town council on Tuesday. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
When you were appointed, I already knew that Burgess Ovitz was not going to be here today, so your first meeting was not going to be as an alternate, but as a prime member of the Zoning Board of Appeals. Don't let that frighten you. We're just reviewing applications this evening. We're not making any important decisions.
Okay,
I think it's probably like at least a couple of days before you did that.
thank you.
And because of that, council has graciously agreed to review for us what it is exactly expected of the Zoning Board of Appeals members. And I think it will definitely be beneficial for you as a new member, and it will be beneficial for all of us as a refresher. So, Mary?
Yes, so I just wanted to start with the process of the applications. So if someone needs a variance, they come in, they see Karen and Chris, and they fill out an application, which is what you have in front of you. Once Karen and Chris receive the applications, they then put those applications in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals. So at the first meeting, when you're seeing these applications, which tonight, both of these are the first time, the only thing the board is looking at is whether or not the application is complete. So you want to look at it and you want to see is all the information on the actual application itself. Is all the information that you need attached to the application there? Is the information that is attached, does it have all of the specifications that you want to see? If all of that is in the application, then the board can go ahead and approve it as complete. If there's something missing from the application, or if there are certain measurements the board wants to see or specific measurements they want to see, then you would not approve it as complete and you would have the applicant bring that material back to you for the next meeting. The ZBA does public hearing. I'm confusing this with planning board.
Yes.
Yeah, so
Every variance has to have a public hearing.
Yep, so once the application is deemed complete by this board, a public hearing will be set for the next meeting. And that's when the public can come and give their opinion on the application, if there are any opinions. Sometimes there are lots, sometimes there's none. And at the next meeting is when you'll actually review. There's state mandated requirements that you need to consider as a board. So it isn't just how you feel about the application. The state law says you have to weigh the benefit of the applicant against the burden to the health, safety, and welfare that may be suffered by the community. And in order to reach that decision, there are 5 specifications in the state law, and those are on the application. And when you go through whether or not the board is going to approve these variances, each of you should go through those 5 considerations in the application. And it doesn't matter how the applicant answered those, it matters how you as a board would answer those. So if you look at the first one, it's describe how the requested variance will not alter the character of the larger neighborhood or impact adjacent properties. So as a board member, you should say why you think it would or wouldn't, and then your reasons for that decision. And you should do that for each of the 5 questions. But it really doesn't matter how the applicant has answered those. It matters how you as a board feel about those 5 considerations. But that is for next week. Tonight, you're just going to decide whether or not these applications are complete or if you want to see more information.
Thank you. Indeed. Now I know.
It's next month, right? Not next week.
Yes. next
Oh,
month.
sorry, did I keep saying we?
Yeah, I was like, wow.
Yeah, it is.
All right, with that then, we are going to be reviewing new application 2024 AV-1, John Terlaga, parcel number 292.11-1-32. Side yard variance requested. Applicant is proposing to build a metal carport open on all sides 5 feet away from the attached structure. Per Article 6, General Regulations, Section B.3C, the accessory structure shall be no closer than 10 feet to the principal building or accessory structure. This application is seeker, I know the word. I just can't pronounce it. Seeker exempt, referral to county planning is not required. The applicant has been advised to submit a jurisdictional inquiry to the APA. And with that, Mr. Talaga, would you please come up to the table? Would you state your name for the record and please speak into the microphone?
John Terlaga.
And Mr. Talaga, what is it exactly that you are trying to do with this variance?
I'm trying to build a metal carport. And I want it to be 5 feet from my house because instead of 10 feet. Because the property next door has trees and a grade coming down to my side yard. There's plenty of property there, but if I go to 10 feet from my house, I'll be having to do a lot of tree work and build a retaining wall and grading, and it's a lot of work there. But if I put it 5 feet from my house, it'll sit right in nice.
Okay, anyone have any questions for Mr. Talaga as what his intent is?
Why don't you want to put it on the other side where you have 44 feet?
Because I would be running over utilities. I have a utility box on the corner of that property, the front corner. There's cable TV, there's power. It's underground and I'm not gonna be running over that or digging into that. Also, from my house on that side is a serious grade. I'd have to do some excavation and cutting a lot of trees on that side too. So, I mean, that side's out of the question.
Anyone else have any questions for Mr. Talaga? Thank you, sir.
Yes, you're welcome.
I'd like to review the application. Property is 83 Fenway Drive, Lake Luzerne, New York. It is not within 500 feet of a county or state right of way. Mr. Talaga is the applicant and the owner. He's asking for a 5-foot distance between the building versus the required separation distance of 10 feet. Variance from Article 6, General Regulations, Accessory Buildings and Uses, B3C, no closer than 10 feet to principal building or other accessory structure. History of the property: the house was built in 2007, purchased a house in 2019, looking to build a carport to cover his boat. Description of the proposed action: requesting carport distance from left side of house to be 5 feet, giving him 14 feet to the left side of the property line. Response to the answers to the variance standards. Question 1, describe how the requested variance will not alter the character of the larger neighborhood or impact adjacent properties. The response is, there are other carports on sides of houses in the neighborhood. No impact on adjacent properties over 14 feet from the property line. No trees or grading involved. Property is surrounded by trees on 3 sides. The carport will not impede anyone's view. I would like to go through all of these responses and then poll the board as to whether they have a question of completeness, unless someone disagrees.
Agreed.
Question number 2, describe what alternatives have been explored to achieve a solution other than a variance. The response is, it is the only place to put it on the property. I have septic in the back, then trees. I have utilities on the right side of the house. Moving the carport 10 feet from the property line would involve trees, grading, and a retaining wall. Question number 3, explain whether the requested variance is substantial. Response is, I realize that I'm asking for half of the required distance between the building, but the construction is metal and open on all sides and poses no fire risk. Question number 4, describe how the requested variance will not have an adverse impact on physical and environmental conditions in the neighborhood. The response is, there is no grading the yard, flat where proposed, just grass, no changes. Question number 5, describe how the requested variance is not a self-created difficulty. The response is, nowhere else to put the carport, exhausted all other options. There is a drawing of the proposed location. Obviously not to scale,
Sorry about that.
unless you got like a really tiny house. Showing the house showing the carport being 14 feet by 34 feet. With a 78-foot setback from the center line of Fenway Drive, so there is no issue with the front setback. The next page is a drawing of the structure. Is this indeed the structure you are building?
Yes,
No deviations?
no deviation, sir.
How is this structure? Is this on concrete piers? Is it?
I'm gonna do concrete piers 48 inches deep.
Copy of the real property deed. Yeah, I was just looking to see where it said it's all. Property of the deed. And that is pretty much it. In reviewing this, my position is that this application is complete as stands. Rail?
Complete as submitted.
Mike?
Yep, I feel it's complete as submitted.
Kayla?
Complete as submitted.
Sonia?
Complete as submitted.
Thank you. Make a motion to accept application 2024 AV-1, John Terlaga, parcel number 292.11-1-3283 Fenway Drive, as complete,
I'll second that motion.
Roll call vote.
please.
Matt,
Yes.
Rail,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes,
Kayla,
Yes.
Sonia.
Yes.
Hearing none, the motion's carried.
Make a motion to establish a public hearing for area variance 2024 AV-1 on 6/13 at 7:05 PM.
I'll second that motion.
Roll call vote.
No, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Hearing none, that motion's carried.
Thank you.
So you're all set with this until next month. What happens now is that I have to put a notice in the paper, and then I also send out letters to all surrounding properties within 500 feet of your property.
Okay.
Okay? And anyone gets a chance to speak at the next meeting for or against your
Okay.
variance.
All right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Amen. Before the meeting, I checked my email and we've got an APA response for the next one.
Next on the agenda is new application variance 2024 AV-2. Robert Maslanka, 238 East River Drive, 1 acre is required for chickens, parcel is 0.69 acres. An enclosure is required in the side or rear yard, proposal is in the front yard. Karen, this packet that we have, is this now officially part of the application?
They supplied it to me tonight. They feel it's, I don't want to speak for you. I believe they feel it's a more fuller explanation of what they're trying to do. So it's going to end up being part of the record and part of the application.
Okay, so this is part of the record.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Would you like for me to go and make some copies real quick?
I did already,
Okay,
or she did it, actually.
Okay.
She brought them with her.
great.
Okay. Welcome.
Thank you.
Tell us about your request.
So we're looking to put a chicken coop in our front yard. Well, it's a chicken run with a coop inside it. So the chickens will be staying inside of their home.
That's it?
So I guess we're shy a little bit of, we're supposed to have 1 acre. We have the 0.69, but the way our property lines are, we can't really locate it anywhere else. Our well is in the backyard. We don't really want to put a chicken coop on top of our well area. We're far enough away from the neighbors. We've already discussed this with all of our neighbors across the road sides. They're all fine with it.
Excuse me. For the record, you are Mrs. Maslanka.
Yes, sorry.
Mary, since her name doesn't appear on the application, there are no issues with her speaking.
I believe she's on the deed. You're on the deed, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, it's fine. I mean, the applicant is here.
Okay.
I could speak up if you
Right.
didn't agree with what she was saying.
Yeah, and I don't like to speak.
Yeah, me neither.
Please
So-
continue.
So basically, we'll be digging down. The only thing environmental that will be disrupting is putting the posts in the ground. And we'll be also burying a little bit of the fence so the chickens can't get out, which would bother the road. There's other people on our road that, yes, they have more acreage, but we feel they don't utilize that acreage. So really, what is the difference? And their chickens are in the road, ours would not be. So basically, that's about it.
And we also put in that packet that at any time where we are done with the chickens, the structure is going to come down.
Okay. The, in the packet, I have the drawing. I assume that, since I know that we are not allowed to take into consideration the fact that you've already started the structure, but let me just say, ask if where this current structure will be the final location of the structure.
Yes,
And the current dimensions are the dimensions on this drawing,
28 by 27.
and
That's the run.
the graphics in here are representative of what you intend to build, or
So,
are what you intend to build.
yes, so the one picture, this one, is the run area. The actual coop will be inside of here. And then the color and the outlet, the design of the flowers and everything is going to be the wood. So that's kind of, it's not exactly what I'm doing, but it's like a representation of it.
Are the dimensions on the map representative of this structure?
Of this structure?
Yes.
No, this is a smaller structure than the structure that I have.
So how large the structure that you're presenting as being,
It's 27 by 28.
and you know how large this structure is?
That, no, I don't know how large that one is.
that was basically just so you
It's
could
the-
see
yeah, it's
like
like-
what the roof of it was going to look like versus the roof of this one. But we plan on painting it white and not letting it be an eyesore, basically.
It's gonna be,
Like a big screen.
it's gonna be a big
Yeah.
fence.
For the chick.
It's
Yeah.
gonna be a big fence.
Right. And I have to ask because it's sitting there right now. The current repurposed outhouse, what will that be?
That's the actual coop.
Yep.
So that's where those go in at night and sleep.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone have any questions for Ms. Lankas?
So the variance is only really for the coop within. Because do you need a variance for like a screen room like that?
The variance is for specifically because it is a chicken coop and a chicken coop in the front yard, which is not allowed by the local law from 2020 that allowed chickens.
Remember when we did your variant, we were,
Oh, I remember vividly, yeah.
and they changed, so they changed the law.
Mhm.
And it now calls for the enclosures to be behind the house, beside or behind the house.
But I was asking like, if somebody wanted to just go put a screen thing like that. 4 sides with fence in their front yard, is there a code against that?
They would have to meet
Right.
the front yard setback, which is 75 feet.
You're like a little, for a fenced in area like that, if you want to put like a fence around a garden.
Not for a fence around a garden. But if you put like a screen house or something like that, yes, you have to meet the front yard setback.
This, if it weren't for the fact that it was a chicken coop, it
I
would be
know.
considered an accessory structure.
Yep, I'm just trying to figure if the variance is for like the screen enclosure or if it's for the actual chicken coop.
It is for the coop. The coop is not allowed in the front yard.
Yep, I agree, yeah.
Anyone else have any questions from Ms. Loftus? Then I'll go through the application. Karen has just,
That's okay. I'm just saying we will have it when we get back to the office.
area variance 2024 AV-2. It is seeker exempt. Karen just handed me a copy of the county of the APA. APA is non-jurisdictional. Referral to county planning has been submitted to the county. Property address 238 East River Drive, County ID 317.8-1-51.69 acres. Applicant and the owner of the same, Robert Maslanka. Chapter and section of ordinance, which is for which relief is sought, local law number 1 of 2020. And D3, not in the front yard. Section 3C1, 1 acre required. History of the property, my family and I have lived here for the last 5.5 years. This is a nice home. And the chicken coop will be the same. Description of the proposed action, what to build an enclosure for chickens. There's not enough room because of the pool and the steep bank in the backyard, and my well is in the back. My daughter has been going to therapy, and the doctor said the animal interaction will be good for her. Answers to the questions for the variance standard, describe how the requested variance will not alter the character of the larger neighborhood or impact adjacent properties. The responses, there are lots of chickens on East River Drive, mostly in East River Drive, I agree. So they will fit right in. Already spoke with neighbors. They're excited about us having. Question number 2, describe what alternatives have been explored to achieve a solution other than a variance. Responses, so not having enough land in the back of my house, I would like to put the coop up front. Question number 3 is explain whether this requested variance is substantial. Response is, I've been doing research on how much room each chicken should have, and they say it should be 3 to 6 square feet, depending on the size of the breed of the bird.
Continued on page 2, the answer to that.
Yeah. Look at your page. On my page 2, I have 3 continuations of 3 and 4.
Yeah, that's what I meant. I'm sorry. I thought you were on 3.
Okay. I need 1 acre per regulation. I need 1 acre per regulations. I have 0.69 acres, so I'm asking for about a 30% difference. I don't feel this is a large variance. The regulation of not having it in front of the yard is make my request substantial, but I cannot locate it anywhere else. Question number 4, describe how the requested variance will not have an adverse impact on physical and environmental conditions in the neighborhood. Response is, it is going to be a pretty coop and people are going to want one too. This coop will be very well maintained. We love animals. My daughter is diagnosed with anxiety and depression. These chickens will have already helped with that. We are not disturbing the property other than to bury the posts in the ground, no concrete. I feel there will be no adverse environmental issues as we are designing it to meet humane guidelines, and we will be keeping the coop cleaned and the food will be stored in steel garbage cans. Question number 5, describe how the requested variance is not a self-created difficulty. Response is, my kids would love to have the chickens. I believe it will build character and teach them how to be responsible. As mentioned above, the chickens will help with mental health. However, it is a self-created as we are asking for do something that does not meet code. There's the sketch of the location on the property. Copy of the deed. That pretty much takes care of it. I believe this application is complete as submitted, Rail. Mike,
Complete as submitted.
Kayla,
I agree, complete as submitted.
Sonia,
Complete as submitted.
Make a motion to accept as complete area variance 2024-AV-2, Robert Mazlanka, parcel number 317.8-1-51, 238 East River Drive.
I'll second that.
Roll call vote.
Please,
Matt,
yes.
Rail,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Kayla,
Yes.
Sonia.
Yes.
Hearing none, the motion's carried.
Motion to establish a public hearing for area variance 2024-AV-2 on 6/13 at sometime after 7:05, since we already have one at 7:05. No earlier than 7:05.
I'll second that.
Roll call vote.
No. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Hearing none, the motion's carried.
Thank you. Your application has been accepted as complete. A public hearing has been established for 6/13. What I didn't state previously, for the previous applicant, but I will state for you, and I will get that information to him. We are only looking at the application as complete. The application is being accepted as complete. That does not mean the members of the board agree with the responses to the application, but the application is complete. You'll have your public hearing on 6/13.
Understood. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Minutes. Has everyone had a chance to look at the minutes? Does anyone have any question on the minutes? I make a motion to accept the minutes from March 14, 2024.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Hearing none, the motion's carried.
On to old and new business. Well,
Set.
Thank you.
Thank you.
have a look up more. Didn't realize they hadn't left yet, that they were waiting. There has been much discussion between Chris and Karen and Mary and myself regarding some of our current definitions for structure, accessory structure, and retaining wall. We have several retaining walls which are currently in violation. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
When the zoning regulations, when the were revised in 19, specific words which were regarding retaining walls, which weren't there previously. Our current definition is a retaining wall is a man-made barrier constructed for the purpose of stabilizing soil, retarding erosion, or terracing a parcel or site. Now to get down to the key part. This accessory structure must comply with all setback requirements. See setbacks. And cannot exceed 6 feet in height or 25 feet of total length measured from its lowest base. Any retaining wall proposed to exceed 6 feet in height measured from the base shall require a construction drawing signed by a professional engineer. Now, the word of concern here is accessory structure. Mary, as far as I see, the retaining wall is an accessory structure in this definition, whether it was intended to be that way or not. It is an accessory structure and subject to the setback requirements for accessory structures until, if we feel that this is incorrect, until this is changed by the town council. Is that correct? So what this means is accessory structures have to be separated by 20 feet,
10 feet
10 feet.
from other structures.
And you can only have two accessory structures on the property exclusive of a garage. And a retaining wall can't be more than 25 feet long. So if you've got an area requiring more than 50 feet of retaining wall, would have to be multiple retaining walls, and beyond that,
Or a variance.
or a variance, yes, or a variance. So Chris has been going through in his permitting process for short-term rentals, has been visiting a lot of properties which might not be totally compliant with zoning code. And this has come up multiple times, so I'm just asking what your thoughts are. When I was on, I think I was the only member of the board when the regulations were amended in 19 Railman, just fine. I quite honestly, I don't remember the term accessory structure being there. But it is in the definition. And Chris has brought up a good point in that if we were to request the council to remove the term accessory structure, so it just said structure, then what do we use to define the separation distance between retaining wall sections? Can you have, since the retaining wall can only be 25 feet long, can it be 25 feet and then a 1 inch separation and another 25 feet? So the answer to that is we are going to the town engineer to get clarification on what this regulation should be, because this is kicked around several times. I know that part of the history, and I'll let Karen talk about it, because it was with the heights and drainage.
This whole change came about, this happened partially before I was here and after I was zoning officer, but someone had built a retaining wall up in the heights somewhere that in doing so, it was so big that it directed water off their property completely and onto a neighboring property and was washing out the foundation, the area around the foundation and the support of this other camp. So they decided to rewrite this part of the ordinance. They did it and they made the amendment that's in a group of changes that were made. We did, Chris, Matt, you're not aware of this, but we had a discussion with Mary later today. And I should let Chris probably speak to this more than me. Anyway, we kind of decided that if someone wants a retaining wall, the way the ordinance is written right now, and the way that local law is written, and it's more than 25 feet long, they're going to have to either ask for a variance for it or break it by the 10 feet right now that is required in the ordinance. We're not going to take it to the engineer to have them look at it, because all they would do, they would more be looking at the design of it rather than the separation of it, kind of. So for now, we're gonna have to go with what is written unless you come up with something different that you want to propose and change before they make the change to this whole zoning ordinance.
I would be interested in knowing from a civil engineer what a reasonable separation distance between sections should be to allow for drainage. You know, I agree that right now we have the definition, it says it's an accessory structure. Until the rules are changed, we have to go by the current rules. That does not mean that what we're going by is correct from an engineering perspective. So, you know, I never get to spend town money, so I want to spend some town money.
Well, we have to do that. I'm going to have to take it to the board and get their approval, because the consulting engineer company will charge the town, and I can't just do that without having board approval.
I am totally aware of that, and I am more than willing to be at the board meeting to support the presentation or to make the presentation.
But an engineer can't just give us a generic 10-foot blanket. If it's type 1 soil, it's type 2 soil, if it's crushed stone, there's so many different variables involved in. An engineer can't just say, look, they can't just give us a magic number and say 10 foot is a separation.
When this came up for discussion to
No,
be,
I agree. I absolutely agree about your statement about the type of soils. So we need definition as to what it needs to be. Chris brought up a point, it's, we have an individual who is, has a violation and is, his suggestion was he take his retaining wall and he break it up, and where he's taking out the sections of the retaining wall, he wants to install riprap. Now, what's riprap? Well, riprap is rocks for the purpose of stabilizing soil. So per our definition, riprap is a retaining wall. So, and then the question, Chris asked the question, what if we use geotech fabric? That's a good question. Now, if we use geotech fabric, is that man-made? Yeah. If I cover geotech fabric with sod,
It's the way it's now, they have to come get a variance and engineers looks at each individual situation. Like what's broken about, I'm not trying to question it, I'm just asking what's broken about.
right now, though, they don't have to get an engineer drawing for the length of it, it's only the height of it, the way it's written. Okay, but we have a limit of 25 feet. So if they want more than 25 feet, they have to ask for variance or break it up into sections somehow.
I think we'd also benefit from establishing what type of materials or methods of retaining wall can be used. You know, is riprap a retaining wall, or is it just a soil erosion barrier? It would be helpful to us when determining when someone comes in for a permit, build a retaining wall, what they can and can't do.
from what I have seen, the majority of retaining walls which are installed are landscaping beautification projects. They are not to control water flow, because the one in particular that Chris is having to look at, if you rip that entire thing out and sodded the hillside, that would control water flow. If you ripped out the retaining wall and installed a bank of riprap, that would control the water flow because it would disperse the water flow. A retaining wall, the water is going to flow down the hill over the retaining wall and continue flowing down the hill. There's nothing to stop the flow of water, other than the fact that if you angle your retaining wall, you can direct the flow of water to your neighbor's property, which is illegal. Not to say it's not happening, because it is. So Karen, I would be more than willing to go to the town council with you to talk about hiring the engineer.
If they agree to that. I mean, that's what the discussion is for, is to find out if the board wants
Right.
us to do that.
Well, what are your thoughts?
Still trying to figure out the answer, or like what you're looking for clarification on the separation.
Right. To control stormwater flow.
It's like spillway. The part there, probably minimum 3 in the separation.
Right now, we're making people, we're making people modify retaining walls.
Have a minimum of 10-foot separation between the wall lengths.
Because that is what our definition for accessory structure
So the wall
requires.
has 19.
Yes.
We
Yeah.
just have to prove that the wall was built after it was passed. Because if the wall was built in 18, isn't it grandfathered in?
Well, there were regulations before, but they were not as detailed.
And it didn't include the word accessory structure.
Right.
That's correct.
Actually, before we can do that, we have to approve the wall.
Let me, I have the original word.
After the wall. is attached.
Which can be challenging at times depending on the amount of trees on a property. But you could also look at it, and some of them have been there for a long time.
I've got it right here, Karen. The old definition of retaining wall is man-made barrier constructed for the purpose of stabilizing soil, retaining erosion, or terracing a parcel or site. So there were no specifics as to the height, the length, and it was not referred to as an accessory structure, so there were no separation requirements.
I found several that were attached to the foundation of the house, and they just extend out from there.
You just have to prove that it was not after the law was passed.
Well, if they were before the law was passed, then they're grandfathered in. Yeah,
So like the one question of the riprap was that done before or after 19?
after.
All that, the one in question was everything was done after then.
Is an engineer gonna be part of the rewrite? The code rewrite?
I'm assuming that, but I have no idea
I
what
know
the
there's gonna be
process
one
is
on
going to be. I'm assuming that.
If we hire a firm
And
or a contractor to do it.
I have installed lots of retaining walls and riprap and geotech fabric.
Well, I'm
But
just thinking-
I have never been asked a question of what is the separation distance for a retaining wall. Because of a water flow consideration.
One of the easiest fixes, I think, to this is to include that if the wall is over 6 feet height and longer than 25 feet, the whole thing has to be engineered, not just the height requirement requiring it to be engineered, but the whole idea of it being excessive in length would require it to be an engineered wall as well. And then the only requirements they would have to meet beyond that would be your side, rear, front yard setbacks.
We're still stuck with the separation issue with accessory structure and the definition, but that would help with a lot of things, the drainage. Matt, do you think a long retaining wall longer than 25 feet would, they would install drainage?
But you could take out that accessory structure part of it and just say this. There's a word in somewhere that they use for like patios and things that aren't structures. And it's in seeker, I think is where it is. That maybe we could substitute this accessory structure with that word.
The answer to your question is I would never install any retaining wall without drainage behind it, right? I don't, well, maybe if it was 3 feet wide. But
A properly installed retaining wall should not have any water.
so no one used the term proper to describe the situation to which I'm referring.
Yeah, 100% of retaining walls and water doesn't go.
Aperture, and is that the word I'm looking for? This is out of seeker. Or placement of minor accessory / appurtenant residential structures, including garages, carports, patios, decks, swimming pools, tennis courts, satellite dishes, fences, barns, storage sheds, and other buildings not changing land use or density. That's out of the secret book. I wonder if we changed it from accessory building to that aperture, I don't know how to say it, APPURTENANT,
Appurtenant.
It's essentially the same thing though, secondary building that are pertinent to the main building.
So it's still a
Accessory
building,
structure.
okay.
But it would not count towards the accessory structure maximum of 2 on a parcel if we change the word, right?
Means the same thing. It's just a synonym for.
Well, maybe we
accessory
could come up with a different word of it than accessory structure of some kind.
Big accessory, yeah. Maybe they just. Threw the word in, maybe spell check, put the word in. Have them take accessory.
The word structure would lead us to confirming that it requires a permit, because structure is anything more than 6 inches off grade. It's not landscaping, like a patio doesn't require a permit, patio blocks. Unless there's something that's more than 6 inches off the ground, that classifies it as a structure. Like a fence.
So do we talk to the board? What? Do we want to proceed further? Try to get some clarification?
I think so. What do you guys think? It doesn't hurt.
I mean, are there like immediate problems with it?
We have,
From the discussion I've been having with Chris, my answer would be yes.
yeah, we have 2 wall violations currently trying to figure out a way to come compliant. We've had several, you saw one here for a variance that we required them to separate it by 10 feet.
In that, we just do the same thing we did with those people. That worked. They went through the variance system. The variance system is in place to help solve these problems that arise. I'm not trying to be cheap. I just hate spending the town's money if we don't have to. That hire an engineer to come in to say, remove the word accessory.
There's another one on Valeria Drive that is seeking an APA variance for a retaining wall that I don't recall the exact dimensions, but it might be,
Been in front of the board too.
yeah, 108 feet in length, maybe 8 feet in height. But the APA wants them to, their APA suggested a design of 100 square foot retaining wall separated by 10 feet each. And almost kind of a rice paddy layout, but it would take up a lot more property for him to do that as opposed to just a straight up wall. So he's pursuing a variance with the APA.
Do we have a contact at the APA so we can find out what their justification for the 10-foot separation is? I mean, that would be a free first step.
I could put in a phone call.
And I said, for right now, why don't we leave it if we contact the APA to see if they have had engineers look at it and have a justification for their 10-foot separation requirement, then maybe we should consider changing our 20-foot separation requirement to 10 feet.
It's 10 feet
I'm
currently.
sorry, 10 feet. It is 10 feet.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's the answer.
Advice.
Yeah, contact the APA.
Okay, I'll report back to you all.
Thank you. Anybody have anything else? Oh, I do have one thing that, which is pertinent to this evening's meeting. I was, in discussion with a friend of mine last night, who might possibly be involved with the modifications to the Luzerne music camp. Karen, the separation distance per Tom McKinney from the county building department, that 10-foot separation distance is fire code. And looking at the application we had this evening, I agree that the structure is steel or aluminum. And so there's not a fire issue there, but that structure, which is going to be 5 feet from the house, is also going to be housing his boat, which will have gasoline, because you can't get all the gasoline out of it. So I'm just making the statement.
I also talked to the county about this particular one. Since you brought it up, I was gonna do it at the next meeting, but I'm told that because it's metal construction and open on all sides, that they will not be requiring that 10-foot separation between the buildings. However, they weren't thinking about the boat being in it, but that's when I talked to the county, that's what I was told.
Yeah, I don't know what the difference, well, I do know what the difference is between this and an attached garage, because the wall between the structure and the residence has to be fire rated for an attached garage. So if you have an open structure, but you're storing vehicles with gasoline, the exterior of the house is not fire rated.
Right. You're right.
You have to get a permit for those carports, right?
They're making him get a
Yes,
permit,
yes.
yes.
You almost have to pull it. What's gonna stop you?
He said tonight he's putting it on piers.
Oh, I heard that. Well, four corner piers at 48 inches, if they're not carriage bolted in correctly, that thing's just gonna go, especially in Fenway.
Well, it's
So that's not great.
38, it's
Yeah.
38 feet deep, so four corners, it's not gonna do it.
Yeah.
But that isn't our concern.
And you can drive over like the sub-area.
I am also aware of that. There are certain, and this is not the first time we've had a variance application, because the alternatives are more expensive than what the applicant would like. Anybody have anything else?
What is the trigger point for these carports to require a permit? We've had a few here in town that did not require one, that was a similar design.
What I've always used is that if the county isn't requiring a permit for them and they consider them temporary, I'm not requiring a permit for them. In this case, the county is requiring a permit for this one, and so he's got to come get a zoning compliance form and he's not meeting the standards.
Is it the square footage of it that, do we
It's the
know?
way they're anchored in most cases, and the way they're designed for snow load, that kind of thing. But that's the county's call on whether they're requiring a permit for them or not.
I've had a few short-term rentals that had these carports and the county determined that no permit was needed.
And I go with what the county
Right.
says on.
Does that violate our definition of structure? Well,
Well,
look,
stop hitting the buzzer. I'm putting it under Chris's feet.
Well,
You say, if you don't have anything else, I can speak. You're press.
One of the
Alright,
things that I want to say is that the interpretation of the code is left up kind of to the zoning officer, my assistant,
right,
and my assistant. And I try to use a little bit of common sense when I make these decisions on whether a permit's required or not. And again, having worked in the building code field for all those years, knowing the background of the state code, I kind of go along with what, if the county says yes or no, that's what I've been going with, especially as our code does not talk about temporary structures. The only time it talks about temporary structures is in like if you put up one of those construction trailers when you're doing construction, that's the only time it talks about a temporary structure in our zoning ordinance.
if you.
And it's one of the things on my list of changes.
If you have a carport, which is on piers or a foundation, bolted to either one, to my way of looking at it, that is not a temporary structure.
But if it was one of those canvas tent carports, temporary looking sheds, we don't require a permit for that.
Which is what, just screw anchored into the ground?
It doesn't, we don't have any regulations on it.
Sitting there waiting to blow over.
Yeah.
Basically, it'd be snowed on and crushed.
One of the carports that is at a short-term rental, the current owner indicated that the previous owner passed along that the carport had blown over into the road at some point. So you can only recommend that he staple it down, that he anchors it down, but there's no requirements.
I don't know. I mean, to me,
We'll call that.
it's,
Again, I think that and we're seeing more and more and more of these metal structured buildings. Sometimes the county is requiring permits on them, sometimes they are not. It might, and again, it's one of the things I have on my list to be looked at when we redo this ordinance. That might be the correct time to look at that and make a decision one way or the other, because I look at them when I see them and I think, it's right up front in somebody's yard, no permit has been required. And I've actually seen a couple of them that I've called the county and asked them to look at, do you require a permit on this? Have they put it up with no, without even asking? And every case so far, they have checked with the county and the permit's not been required with them. So again, I think it's something that we seriously can discuss and look at when we do this update on the code. Because again, that the idea of a temporary structure is really not addressed in our zoning ordinance.
right.
And they're all fabric, they last maybe.
Some are fabric, some are just those thin metal frames with the, corrugated roof over the top. And from what I'm getting from the county is it's the anchoring of them, how they, if they're making them kind of permanent on the property, then they're making them get a permit, meeting snow loads and all of that kind of thing. So that's what I'm getting from the county when I called and talked to them about it.
Without a permit, they can't come any closer. They can be right up to a structure, right?
Yeah, I heard nothing to it.
I felt a buzzer.
I was gonna ask Chris if you had any more questions.
We'll save it for next month.
Anything to say?
I'm just taking it all.
Is it everything you would hope for?
I'm here to learn.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Chris? You don't get a vote.